Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Jenn Tran had emotional time, still wants best for Devin Strader. Jenn Tran has had an emotional time since the ending of her engagement. However, she still wants what is best for Devin Strader. Fans feel as though she is the most mature person right now. Regardless of what he did to her, she is still rooting for him. Jenn may not be getting married, but she is going to find her person eventually. Keep reading to find out more. Engagement doesn't work. Devin and Jenn seemed like they were going to be a great couple that would last a long time. However, it was the complete opposite. After the cameras stopped rolling, Devin's demeanor changed. This was shocking to everyone. Fans thought Devin was completely in love with Jenn and would never leave her. However, he expressed to her that he was not in love. He also denied being in love with her. Devin would not even have a conversation with Jenn before the final episode. Also, on the final episode, Devin acted like he had no emotion whatsoever. He was a completely different guy. Jenn Tran still wishes Devin the best. Jenn Tran is trying to heal from this failed engagement. However, she still wishes the best for Devin. She made a long Instagram post explaining a lot. Jenn Tran sat on the porch of her small, cozy home, gazing out at the fading sunset. The soft hues of orange and pink reflected the conflicted emotions swirling inside her heart. The cool breeze rustled through the trees, but despite the calm surroundings, her mind was anything but peaceful. Her thoughts were consumed with Devin Strader, the man who had once held her heart and now seemed to live only in the shadows of her memories. Their relationship had been a whirlwind, passionate, intense, and, at times, overwhelming. They had shared moments of pure joy and others of soul-crushing despair. Jenn could still remember the way Devin's smile lit up a room, how his laugh could make her forget the world's troubles. But there were darker memories too, the ones she tried to push away, the arguments, the long silences, the emotional distance that had grown between them over time. It hadn't been easy for Jenn to walk away. In fact, it had been one of the hardest decisions of her life. She had tried to make it work, had fought with everything she had to save what they once had. But love, as powerful as it is, sometimes isn't enough. And Jenn knew that holding on to something broken wasn't going to heal either of them. She wiped a tear from her cheek, the weight of those emotions pressing down on her chest. Even though they had parted ways, Devin was still a part of her, woven into the fabric of her soul. It was impossible to sever that connection completely, no matter how hard she tried. She could still feel his presence in her life, even if it was only through memories and the occasional glance at old photographs. Despite the pain, Jenn wished nothing but the best for Devin. It was strange, she thought, how love could evolve, how it could shift from a romantic attachment to a deep, genuine care for another person's well-being. She wasn't bitter or resentful. She had learned to let go of those feelings, to free herself from the burden of anger. It had taken time, though, a lot of time. There had been nights when she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she had made a mistake. She had replayed their final conversations over and over in her mind, analyzing every word, every sigh, every unspoken thought. She had questioned herself, doubted her choices, and even blamed herself for things that weren't entirely her fault. But through it all, Jenn had come to realize something important. She had grown. In the aftermath of their breakup, Jenn had taken time to focus on herself. She had rediscovered old hobbies, reconnected with friends she had neglected, and most importantly, she had learned how to love herself again. It hadn't been easy, and there were still days when she felt like she was stumbling through the dark, but she had come a long way. Devin, on the other hand, had seemed to take a different path. From what Jenn had heard, he was still chasing after his dreams, still trying to find his place in the world. Part of her admired his persistence, his determination to keep going despite the odds. But another part of her worried about him. Devin had always been a bit reckless, diving headfirst into things without considering the consequences. It was one of the things that had drawn Jenn to him in the first place, his adventurous spirit. but it was also one of the things that had ultimately driven them apart. She sighed, her fingers tracing the outline of the coffee cup she held in her lap. She had heard through mutual friends that Devin had been struggling lately. He was lost, they said, unsure of what direction his life was heading. Jenn's heart ached for him. She knew what it was like to feel adrift, to be unsure of your next step. She wanted to reach out, to offer him comfort, to tell him that everything would be okay. But she also knew that she couldn't fix things for him. Devin had to find his own way, just as she had found hers. Still, that didn't stop her from wanting the best for him. In the quiet moments, when the world slowed down, Jenn found herself sending silent prayers into the universe, hoping that Devin would find peace, happiness, and fulfillment. She wanted him to succeed, to chase his dreams and catch them. She wanted him to find someone who could love him the way he needed to be loved, someone who could bring out the best in him. Jenn had no ill will toward him. Their time together had been a chapter in her life, and though it had ended, it had shaped her in ways she couldn't deny. She was stronger now, more self-aware, and more compassionate. Devin had been a part of that journey, and for that, she would always be grateful. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Jenn stood up and wrapped her arms around herself, the cool air sending a shiver down her spine. She wasn't sure if she and Devin would ever cross paths again. Maybe they were destined to remain apart, two souls who had shared a moment in time but were meant to walk different roads. Or maybe, someday, they would find their way back to each other, not as lovers, but as friends, as people who had once meant the world to each other and still cared deeply. Jenn smiled softly to herself as she turned to go back inside. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't need to. What mattered was that she had found peace within herself. And as for Devin, she would always hold a space for him in her heart, hoping that wherever life took him, he would find the happiness he deserved. Still, that didn't stop her from wanting the best for him. In the quiet moments, when the world slowed down, Jenn found herself sending silent prayers into the universe, hoping that Devin would find peace, happiness, and fulfillment. She wanted him to succeed, to chase his dreams and catch them. She wanted him to find someone who could love him the way he needed to be loved, someone who could bring out the best in him. Jenn had no ill will toward him. Their time together had been a chapter in her life, and though it had ended, it had shaped her in ways she couldn't deny. She was stronger now, more self-aware, and more compassionate. Devin had been a part of that journey, and for that, she would always be grateful. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Jenn stood up and wrapped her arms around herself, the cool air sending a shiver down her spine. She wasn't sure if she and Devin would ever cross paths again. Maybe they were destined to remain apart, two souls who had shared a moment in time but were meant to walk different roads. Or maybe, someday, they would find their way back to each other, not as lovers,